I'd seen little photos of, but I'd never seen for real. And it just occurred to me personally that this would be a fantastic thing to include in the film, as though Frankenfurter himself had suddenly discovered all these things and wanted them for his home. And when I'm very fastidious about detail, they say, why are you worrying? I say, now listen, in 5 or 10 years' time, we might be asked about this prop. Why is this glass here? Why is this, what's that note on the wall? All those kind of things. And I think that was something that I've just found that all that truth is incredibly important. And I also find it makes it fun. I think you've got to believe, when you work in a film, you've got to believe everything about it. So you've got to actually make sure that every scene that you do, everything in it's real, right? That's the important thing. Well, real for those characters. We wanted to place it very firmly in kind of Middle America. I mean, not that I knew what Middle America was, except that I knew that they had kind of nice white churches. And we built that just outside of, in fact, that was in a paddock opposite the house and just down from the studio. And all it was really, it was just the facade of that church. It was just to sort of set up normal, Brad and Janet were very normal. And you'll obviously be aware of the fact that we set it on the date of Nixon's resignation. This was a very conscious decision so that we could kind of place it in history. There was actually a line that Brad had in the play, which was, he said,
it's probably some kind of hunting lodge for rich weirdos.
And I thought, I wonder what a hunting lodge for rich weirdos look like. It shouldn't be heads of, normal things that you have, mounted on a wall. And so I had things like cats and dogs, and because Frankenfurter didn't understand what people on Earth did with these things, which is I think why Brad referred to it as being a hunting lodge for rich weirdos. That was a starting point, and that was actually in the house proper. And we built the elevator in the sort of stairwell area there. I'd just been to Amsterdam, and I'd stayed in a really terrific sleazy hotel, which had off the kind of little bedroom and had a bathroom which was done in these pink tiles. And I took photos of this, and I thought that I could imagine Frankenfurter thinking that pink tiles was a good look, and that was the so that was the way that all started. The whole shape of it came from it actually came from the architecture of the house, but also it came from the fact that I just thought it needed to have that sort of slightly sort of theatre quality about it, so that you had a little stage where Frank and Rocky could go into the bedroom with the curtains, and you had the kind of viewing platform for the Transylvanians. The idea of the birth of Rocky just came from a different idea, rather than because I knew how all these other kind of Frankenstein films were done, and I liked the idea of it being done by colour, and that the way that Frank had worked it out was that you just had to create a rainbow, and that's how he created built the creature, and that was the the scene where he adjusting all the colours. That was to form a kind of a perfect spectrum in the tank, and in fact on the day that we were shooting that, I had to no one knew what the colours were, so I had to stand there and yell out to Timmy the colours. And if you watch the way that Tim Curry fumbles around to get those knobs, that was because he didn't know where they were. We tricked him. The idea for the thing that came down with the big balls on it was, the idea of that was to look like a big sort of a cocktail shaker, as though Frank was going to kind of make himself a cocktail. I just wanted to make it exceedingly eclectic. In other words, bits and pieces from all over the place. In the house there was a very, very small ballroom, which we took a lot of castings off all the detail there, and we built the big room and the pool. Well, originally, that in the background to the pool, it was the RKO Pictures Tower. What I actually designed for that was a 20th Century Fox logo, and the idea was that we were going to have, in the background of the logo, there's the searchlights. They were going to be big bits of plywood on strings that Columbia and Magenta were going to be pulling, so it would be kind of jerking across the stage. Like that. I mean, the whole idea was to make it very kind of theatrical, and then just to kind of include the sort of the slightly Esther Williams kind of quality, so that Frank could take all his new chums for a swim. The taking off of the house was actually, we started building a full model of the house. It was going to be really big, and we ran out of money and we couldn't do it. And then someone said, "Look, we'll just do it by cutting a cardboard cutout," and that's what it was. It was just a cardboard cutout. A photo of the house, right, in front of the house. Just got, if you look at it very closely, you can see quite clearly the house is still in the background. It was a very low-tech special effect. In fact, it wasn't even a special effect, it was just an effect. I mean, that was the whole nature of the film, was that we didn't want it to have any of those kind of big tricks. When the executives from 20th Century Fox came over and we were filming the dining scene, I don't think I've ever seen people look more shocked in my life at what we were actually doing. Because when we were setting the whole dining scene up, I just became aware of the fact that actually Magenta wasn't a very good maid, and Riff Raff certainly wasn't a very good butler, and they wouldn't know. They'd think, oh, people have lots of forks, people have lots of knives, and so the whole idea of that came from them thinking they knew what to do, but in fact they didn't know what to do at all, and they were wonderfully incompetent.
It did every cliche in the book about every B movie. And I think even unbeknown to people who hadn't even seen those B movies, it clicks as a cliche thing,
Now, we were more interested in the 50s science fiction films where things were done on the cheap and it all looked like cardboard. And the films that I mentioned in the opening song, The Day the Earth Stood Still, those kind of movies, they're the kind of ones that I was more interested in. And we did view a lot of those at that time. The other film that we were interested in at the time was Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, the Russ Meyer film. So, I mean, we were kind of pretty eclectic in our taste at the time.
There is an element in that film of a kind of elaborate. I mean, in one sense it has a cartoon element to it, but also, or comic strip perhaps more appropriately, element to it. But it also has an element of a home movie, and I think that I think that some of the best films may be technically quite flawed, but they have something of the kind of edge and kind of humanity of a kind of this is kind of a home movie for fairly extraordinary people. There may well have been other actors that auditioned initially for the role of Frank. I can't remember them. I just remember that Tim Curry walked in the door of the Royal Court Theatre saying "Rip it up" and got the role. He ripped it up.
I made you, and I can break you just as easily.
Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick were obviously in the film version, was the American casting. They, at that point in time, were both kind of emerging stars, but they certainly, at that point in time, would have been something that they were, that would be in very much the early part of their film careers. They just seemed somehow or other perfect for it. But again, they had that quality whereby they were able to play the roles, but they also understood there was a kind of irony that's required, that's of a particular kind to play the kind of material that Richard had written, and they had that. And I think that that all of those actors brought a great deal to the finished film.
Janet!
Dr. Scott!
Janet!
Dad!
Rock!
One of the remarkable assets of it, given that once things grow, and Rocky certainly grew from a very small theatre production through umpteen stage versions all over the world into a film, was the way that we were able to maintain the kind of family, as it were, that had originally created it all the way through, and all of those people contributed enormously to it, but also the spirit of that being kept alive was something that has also translated in the film, and so that the contributions of Richard Hartley working with Richard O'Brien on the music, of Brian Thompson and Sue Blaine on the design side, which in the film was then augmented by the cinematographer Peter Sajitsky and Graham Clifford, the editor in particular. All of this played a major role in the film, because in the case of people like Brian, Sue, Richard Hartley and so forth, they had actually travelled the entire journey from a small production in the theatre upstairs at the Royal Court in London all the way to a fairly major motion picture. One of the qualities about Rocky Horror in all its forms was that there was a kind of, it was in essence a first work. It was Richard's first musical, and it was full of his enthusiasms in the way that first works always are. As it happened, those enthusiasms were then shared by a lot of other people. But I also think that everybody else involved with it, brought some of those enthusiasms, and there are kind of echoes of those in the film. I can think of a number of them, and they're very, very disparate ones. In the case of the Transylvanians, there's kind of there's almost a lineage there back to the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz, with the sped-up voices singing, you know, "We're out of the woods," etc., etc.